Welcome back. This is episode 3 of building a game in PyGame for Computer Programming 1 final project. When we left off last time, we had gotten our game window running. It's all looking good. And I did just want to demonstrate really quickly that the scale here, if I make this 1.5, you will actually be able to visibly see a difference in the size of the screen as it pops up. So our window scale is working. I don't know if I actually ever showed that or not. I just wanted to demonstrate that that is how that works. Anyways, we've got our 800 by 600 window, which is going to be absolutely perfect for what we're doing here in the game. And today we're going to set up, well, we're going to build our player class. Our player is going to be an object. Even though it has a graphic, we don't need to make it into a sprite, because it'll be easier to modify it if we don't make it into a sprite. So to get started, let's create a new Python file. And again, you do that by right-clicking on the folder, selecting New, and Python file. And we're going to name it Player. Now, inside of our player class, we will need to import PyGame, because we will be drawing a rectangle using the PyGame draw function. So here, import PyGame module. We also need to, let's see here. I guess we'll just start with the class. We're going to call it player. So, for those of you who don't know what a class is kind of like a function, except for it contains multiple functions and variables inside of it. So you can make multiple versions of it. For example, if you wanted 2 types of dogs, which I could probably demonstrate really quickly in another file. If I just make a new Python file really quickly and do a little lesson on classes. If we have a class called dog, and it's an object, this means that the dog is something that will be used at some point in our world. It's an object in the world. It doesn't need to have parameters in here. Technically, a dog doesn't need parameters, but I like to call anything that's not a sprite an object. Say we're going to create a function that's the initialize function. And what this is going to do inside of a class, it's going to initialize the class and pass it some arguments, some variables. So of course it's a function. Self is always going to be one of the arguments. It's what we use in Python. In other programming languages you'll use this, but in Python you use self. So self is always your first argument, and it doesn't actually count as one of your arguments when you're typing them in. But for right now, we use self and say the dog needs a name and a breed. That's pretty simple, right? So now we're inside of this function, which is called init, and we have the values name and breed. So we need to make these values usable inside of the dog by saying self.name is equal to name. So now we're casting the variables that we're passing here into something we can use inside of the class. Self.breed is equal to breed. And now when we do this, we could create a new function. And this might say talk. You need to pass self because it's talking about the class that it's in, so its own self class. And we can say print self.name. So we're referencing the name value here. Because if we wanted to change self.name or change self.breed, and we just said print name, it's only ever going to print what we do here. And then if we change the name and try to print it again, it's not going to work, because it's referencing that part, not self.name, which is an instance of the variable that we need to change. So after we print the name, we can create another function called, like, information. It's also going to be referencing self, and this might say print self.name, comma self.breed, or maybe self.name plus, I don't know, you could format this to say, like, my name is plus self.name. And he would say, my name is that, plus, and here, my name is that, and my breed is self.breed. So now, the cool thing about this is we're going to create 2 dogs now. And you do this by saying, like, maybe Charlie is a dog. and Max is a dog. So we're creating two instances of this class. I'll make that a little bigger so it's easier to see. Also, anything that I write in this program, you don't need to write. This is just kind of a lesson phase. So everything we do here, you don't need to write. If we're writing it in here, it would be good for you to write it as well. This is what we're doing for the game. This is the lesson phase. So our first dog, Charlie, its name is going to be the string of Charlie, so we can print it. And say its breed is an English bulldog. And then Max, its name is going to be Max. And its breed is going to be maybe a golden retriever. Is that how you spell retriever? I don't know. I think so. It doesn't look right to me, but I can't tell if it's spelled wrong. Anyways, so now what we can say is if we want Charlie to talk, we can say Charlie.talk. Like that. And Charlie will call the talk function inside of Charlie and print its name. We could also say max.information. So now if we save this really quickly, I'm just going to save it to my desktop so we can run it really fast. And I pop out here, let's just minimize you and minimize you. And we run dogs. Whoop! That didn't work. So the reason that didn't work is because inside of this we do need an input just to stop the code from being ran too much. So we run that again. Charlie, because all we did is ask Charlie to talk, and they were just printing self-names. So Charlie said Charlie, and Max said my name is Max and my breed is golden retriever. So this is a way that you can pass information to these dogs and get them to do specific things with individual objects. So now we've covered that, let's get back to actually building our class, our object. And the way that we're going to do this is the player is going to be an object, because it's not going to be a sprite in this case, but it's going to have a sprite group inside of it, but we'll get to that in the next episode. Right now we're just building the player object so we can see them on the screen. Next episode we'll talk about some sprites and how to set them up, and we'll actually build some sprites in the form of the bullets or the lasers that the player will be able to shoot. So just like our other class, the player class is going to need an initialize function. So def in itself. Now the player, we're going to want to have an x value, a y value, and we're already going to have the width and the height inside of the class. I'll show you how to set that up in a minute. That's a value that will not be able to be changed. It will be hard-coded into the class itself. So we need an x value, a y value, and probably a color, just so we can distinguish the difference between the two players. So here we're creating a class, and here we're creating a constructor. Now, again, in order to be able to use these variables, we have to actually say self.x equals x, and you'll see in PyCharm, x will now be dark. Where y isn't, x is. So here we're basically binding the x value to the class. Self.y is equal to y is going to be binding the y value to the class. And self.color equals color, and this is binding the color value to the class. Now, we've got all of that taken care of. The next thing we need to do is draw, oh, actually not quite yet. We're going to create two new variables called self.width and set it equal to 32, and self.height and set that equal to 32. So this is going to be creating a height value, and this one's going to be creating a width value. This is the same as coming into here and saying running equals true. You know, in the player saying self.width equals 32, it's not something that can be changed when we create the object. It's something that will always be like that inside of the object. Now that we've got that out of the way, we need to make an image. And in this case, the easiest way to do it is create a rectangle. So I'm going to name it self.image. I'm going to set it equal to pygame.draw.rect, which is the function used to draw a rectangle. Now you'll see if you just hit enter, down here in the bottom, you'll see these arguments pop up that you need. We need a rect argument, a surface argument, and a color argument. So the first problem is going to be, well, we need a surface to be able to draw this on. So we're going to come up here and add a surface value. Self.surface equals surface. and this will be binding the surface value to the class. So what the surface is going to do is then over here when we create the player, we can pass them the screen value and give them the surface. So that'll make that one nice and easy. So the first thing we need to do is pass the surface, and we'll pass that by saying self.surface, of course, because that's all we need to do. Now we need to give them a color, easy, self.color, and now we need to give them a rect, which is a width, or an x, a y, a width, and a height, all in a tuple. So this will be super simple. Self.x, self.y, self.width, and self.height. Just like that. And you can't quite see the H, it's about to fall off the screen, but it's there, trust me, it's there. How do I do the end of the line? Is it like, dang it. Now I'm clicking on random things on one. There we go, okay. So now we've got ourselves a rectangle, and it's being drawn on our surface, which is our screen, at the color that we're going to give it, with the value x, the value y, the value width, and the value height. For its x, its y, its width, and its height. So that's all been taken care of. The last thing we need to do is create the update function. Now, every time you create an object, the update function is going to be very important, because this is basically going to say, what do we want to do every frame with this object? And in this case, it's going to be redrawing the image. So we'll do that by just self.image equals, and you can copy and paste line from above. I personally like to write it out by hand, because it always gives you practice with the typing and using the self dot, which you're going to be using for any class you ever make. You'll get very used to typing self dot a lot. But anyways, either copy and paste it or rewrite that line right here. And that's our player class done. I'm going to comment this one above, create a image, just because I don't want the comment to be hanging way out. This will be create the update function, and this will be update our image. So that's what everything's doing. Now, let's check and make sure this works by first off importing, I want to move that, so there we go, importing player. The class we just made, or the object, the file, sorry, we just made. We just barely imported it into our game. And now, let's say right here, let's create a new thing called players. And say p1 equals player, the name of the file, dot player, the class. We need an x, which I'm going to pass as 100, a y, which I'm going to pass as 100, a color, which I'm going to pass as data dot colors of index, let's say red. No, we'll make the first one blue. Now, let's see here. The only thing left is the argument surface, which will be screen. Now, we've got one problem with this line of code. Data.colors of blue, I don't think it exists yet. No, it does not. So let's go ahead and add that in really quick. Simply blue, colon, and then a tuple, 0 red value, 0 green value, full blue value. 0, 0, 255, and that's our blue. Now, we've created the player, which I'll throw in some pseudocode, created the player. Now all we have to do is draw the player to the screen. And that's simply done by p1.update. We're calling the update function. Draw and update the player. So every time we update the player, it's going to redraw this rectangle wherever it needs to be. So at the x and the y with the width and the height. So we can change our x and y value inside of our code somewhere. You know, say x plus equals 1 every time it updates, and that rectangle will move. And we'll actually do that here in just a minute. This is just showing that everything's working. So now we've typed p1.update, go ahead and run the game. And if everything works, you'll see a 32 pixel by 32 pixel blue rectangle right here. Now to show you how awesome classes are, let's come in here and say self.x plus equals 1. Save. We're not going to need to pseudocode it because it'll be there just temporarily, but I'm just wanting to show you. Now our class is moving. Our object is moving. So that's showing you that it works, because it's not leaving a trail of these, it's actually moving. This allows me to also show you something else that PyGame does. If we come into here and comment out pygame.display.update and run this again, we should see... Oh, nothing's working there. It's not the display update, it's this one. I believe. Yeah. What we're getting here is the player is being drawn once, but then because we're not refilling the screen every time we update, it's drawing the player a million times as we go. So as long as we are constantly filling the screen before we draw anything, we'll get something that looks like a single object is moving. And I guess that's pretty good for now. Let's go back into the player and get rid of self.x plus equals 1. If you really wanted to see how well that would work, we could import math just really quickly and say, don't do what I'm about to do. Just watch. All I'm doing let's probably do this one. Is using some super simple code, some super simple math code to try to make this thing move in a circular. Well, I didn't do what I wanted to. Why did that not work? Do they both have to be cosine? Well, it worked a little bit. What the heck? I haven't worked with sine and cosine in a little while, so it's new to me. Anyways, now we'll figure it out. That was completely arbitrary and unimportant. I was just going to try to make it move in a circle to show, again, the same way that the screen, if it's not being filled, won't update the player moving. But as long as your game does this, as long as your player sits there, and if you want to, you can add in the code self.x plus equals 1 to check if he moves properly. If he moves properly, you've done good. That's all you need to do, and you're ready to move on to episode 4 of the series. Again, before we end here, if you have any questions or comments, or something isn't working out quite right and you need help, please leave a comment at the bottom of this video. I will get to it as soon as I can, and I will either respond to the comment to help you out, or I will meet you in the class period you have the following day, either second period or third period. You just have to let me know. I'm more than happy to help out. Just leave a comment, and I'll make sure to get right back to you. Anyways, until next time, happy coding.